Whatever you do, do not skip this video. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on July 23rd and that his prophetic funeral, in which Trump will sit next to Obama, will be on July 28th. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis into Busch Stadium on July 27th. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on July 24th. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on July 25th. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on July 26th. I am predicting that James Earl Jones, the voice of the Lion King and the voice of Darth Vader, will die on July 28th, 2024. I am predicting that on August 16th, 2024, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens, and it is probable that on August 16th, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. I am predicting that on August 2nd, Joe Biden will step down and make Michelle Obama the 47th president. It is predicted that Michelle Obama will make Barack Obama her vice president on August 18th, 2024, and then it is predicted that she will step down and make Barack Obama the 48th president on August 25th. It is predicted that on August 6th, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. I am predicting that on August 10th, Israel will nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria. I am predicting that on August 29th, President Trump will die from a heart attack. August 13th will be the date of a catastrophic solar flare from the sun that will knock out the power grid in America that will lead to food shortages. August 15th will be the date of the resurrection rapture, the first of two raptures. The second rapture will be on September 5th. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Okay, words can't express how important this video is. Make sure that you watch all of this video. There will be two parts to this video. One is the explanation of this diagram. This is the new information, or rather the new perspective on the signs that have been accumulating for years. The second half is extremely important. You want to watch the first half, trust me, it's going to be mind-blowing. You will be amazed, and it is important too. But make sure you also watch the second part, which was made in 2022, where I explain what's really going on here. What is the bigger purpose for all of this? What can I tell you? Do not skip this video, okay? There is something extremely important going on here. And I'm not going to explain it at the beginning. I'm going to explain it in the part that I made in 2022. So, and when the prediction comes to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel. The prediction being made here is that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis on July 27th, 2024. This video is about the story, the amazing stories that God has been telling through the NASA helicopter, the Mars helicopter, the first flight on another planet. This extremely important prophetic sign will be, if you will, summarized. I have been focused on this prophetic sign for years, and I have made quite a number of videos on this subject, but this will be the only one that'll be updated. If you want to watch the other ones, you'll have to go back into the channel and find them. And so in other words, if you're only going to watch one helicopter video, this is the one to watch. And obviously, given that it is a major thing in God's signs, you should at least want to watch one helicopter video. Now, not to discourage you from watching the other ones too, but so the theme of this diagram in this video is God's purpose for the Mars helicopter. Let's start with some basics. It's the red planet. All right, and it dropped onto the planet in what scientists, the NASA scientists, call the 7 minutes of terror, because they don't know when it's descending through the atmosphere if it'll make it intact or not. So they're on their edge of the seats. It's called 7 minutes of terror. This is a hint at the tribulation, which is symbolized by a period involving a number 7 from the most central prophecy in the Bible. Okay, and this 70th 7 in the prophecy follows the 69, for example, and that's why we have this 69 days here. It's 690 days, which hints at 69. Well, so it's the red planet, and God is using helicopters in his signs in general, not just the Mars helicopter, for symbolism for dragons because of their tails. Okay, and so we have a falling onto the planet that is red with a helicopter that symbolizes dragons, and this hints at the red dragon that falls from heaven to earth in Revelation chapter 12. That's what this is. This is the basics of the symbolism here. This is Antichrist symbolism. This is the beginning of the collision with the demonic realm and the earthly realm. That's what Revelation chapter 12 is about. When Satan and his angels, used as a metaphor of a red dragon, is thrown from heaven to earth. Okay? So, and also God is using in his signs helicopter rotor blades that resemble X's, because X's in his signs are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. All right? So that's a little bit more basics for you. Now, on that note, why don't we, so for years, since the first flight, I intuitively knew that this would be a major sign, and it would be the day that it would crash. I expected it to crash. I actually thought that it would crash in dramatic fashion, but getting the details of the prophetic signs in advance, or the prophetic outcomes in advance, is not an easy task. But I was correct in that the finality, the final day of the helicopter, is the prophetic date. That was the day that the helicopter suffered damage to its rotor blades, which, as I just mentioned, are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. And then the decision was made to discontinue the Ingenuity helicopter. That's the name of the helicopter. And that date that it, on its landing, on its 72nd flight, suffered the damage, which ended this mission of Ingenuity, was January 18th, 2024. This was the symbolic date that I had been anticipating for a long time. It's the same as, for example, the prediction for Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash. God has been communicating this through his signs since 2020. And along the way, there have been these steps that God's pointing to ahead of time. And it's not really possible to know ahead of time whether or not it will be the end of the trail, in this case, the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, or a step in the trail that's leading further on to more signs and another date that God is pointing to. That was the case with the helicopter too. And so this is the first one, if you will, where we are looking at the final date in the past tense. Yay. There are quite a number of predictions going on here, and it turns out they're all going to happen at the same time. That's, it's I don't know what to say about that. They're all coming together at the same time. It's so precise that we're able to distinguish which dates. First, it's Carter on the 23rd. Then it's Paul Simon on the 24th. Then on the 25th, it's the dirty bombs in New York City. Then on the 26th, it's Israel bombing Iran. Then on the 27th, it's Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash. Then on the 28th, it's Carter's prophetic funeral. And then on August 1st, it's the death of James Earl Jones. And then on August 2nd, it's the stepping down of Biden and the Michelle Obama becoming the president. And then, on August 13th, it's the solar flare. And then on the 15th, the solar corona mass ejection from the solar flare will knock out the power grid. And that will be the day of the resurrection rapture on the August 15th. So, it's all coming in a rapid fire. Okay, but anyway, we're looking at the first one here in the past tense we can celebrate. Finally got one in the past and not still in the future, which was the final date of the helicopter. The helicopter was one of the signs, like I just listed basically all of the signs that we've been following, the trails, and this was the first one to be in the past tense, come and go, finally. Okay, so, and it connects to the date that and I always knew from the very beginning, and I'll explain more in a minute, that the day that the helicopter would end would be a symbolic step in the trail of signs leading to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. Because it's a falling from the sky, just like on Mars, when I anticipated that the helicopter would fall from the atmosphere on Mars onto the red planet, which would symbolize the red dragon being thrown down from heaven to earth. We kind of almost got it. It was on the landing, and it suffered damage to the rotor blades. So it's basically what I had predicted. Now, it was the 70-second flight, and that hints at 2 times 6 times 6. And that is because the 266th Pope, Pope Francis, is the first of the 2 antichrists. And the antichrists are the leaders of the antichrist system that will enforce the mark of the antichrist, hence the rotor blades in this 70-second flight. Okay, now 191, because God uses this number frequently to point to not only 9/11, the judgment warning in 2001, the big warning for America to repent or else destruction, but also the verse, the Bible passage that symbolizes what I mentioned, which is this coming collision between the demonic realm and the earthly realm. Revelation 9:11. Okay, that's what it symbolizes also. So that's why 191 is relevant. I could give you other examples in God's big picture of signs. And that's how his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. Speaking of which, we're going to get into a second witness right here. We've got this period of 9 plus 9 plus 9 months exactly, followed by exactly 111 weeks, which gives us another 9/11, hinting at Revelation 9/11. And that's also, by the way, symbolized with Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash, which will be 9 plus 11 days before the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. And Revelation chapter 9, which includes Revelation 9:11, the 5th trumpet. Okay? So, now, before I continue on with this part of the diagram, let's just go down here first. This state right here, so along the way, we had prophetic flights of the helicopter. I'm giving you years worth of story all at once. You are privileged, in my opinion, to get this all at once and not have to follow along for years to figure all of this out. So this prophetic flight here on June 11th, 2022 was quite something, because the flight was exactly 66.6 seconds. And you can go onto Wikipedia, and it's the page that's titled List of Ingenuity Flights. If you just go to Ingenuity, it's a different page on Wikipedia than the page that is titled List of Ingenuity Flights. And you can get all the details, such as the times of the flights, etc., on that page. This flight right here, now I forget the number of this flight. It may have been prophetic, and I can't remember everything. And all of this on the diagram is off the top of my head. This is all that I've remembered, because I've put it into memory, but I can't remember every single detail. Anyway, the flight here was 66.6 seconds, and this is memorable because not only is this number hinting at the Antichrist, and again, the helicopter itself is Antichrist symbolism, as I have explained, but the date that it flew for 66.6 seconds was the date 611, which hints at 6 times 11 equals 66. And also the 11th triangular number, by the way, is 66. So we have the date that hints at 666, and it flew for 666 or 66.6 seconds. Exactly. Like literally, it's not even 66.61, it's just 66.6. Okay? And but what is really profound here is that so here we go. This is, hopefully you're seated. Okay? If you're not, take a seat. This was the same day that it was reported there was this freak, rare weather event that was one day only, this date, in which a heat, you couldn't even call it a wave because it was a one-day event, this heat phenomena, okay, occurred on this day. And this was when 2,000 cattle died in Kansas. Okay, it was a national news story. You can look it up. 2,000 cattle died on one day because of the heat in Kansas. This was a slaughter. Okay, not only that, but it was Kansas. And this, in God's signs, and it makes sense because it's true, is symbolic of the slaughter of the buffalo. Because that's where the buffalo were slaughtered, but also where the slaughtering of the buffalo out west was put onto the trains to be processed in Kansas. So in other words, Kansas is like the state where the slaughter happened. I mean, obviously the buffalo were all over, not just in Kansas, but the processing plants, etc., all of the money was made when the carcasses of the buffalo were shipped back to Kansas on the trains. Okay, so this is symbolic of slaughter. And then here we have the cattle, which is symbolic of the bison and the slaughter of the cattle that was 2,000 due to the heat in one day. Okay, it wasn't over a few days, it was only one day. The date that the helicopter flew for 66.6 seconds. And as I mentioned, the helicopter's rotor blades are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, because of their shape resembling an X. So what God is communicating here clearly is slaughter from the mark of the Antichrist. The mark of the Antichrist has been, will be a slaughter. Okay? Not only that though, the mark of the Antichrist is the thing. In its current form, does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or a false form of religious worship of some sort, nor does it need a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why most quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is judgment for this particular doctrine of dispensationalism. And the reason why the prediction being made in this video is to prove what I have just said. Believe me, I know far better than you. The reason why God has provided this prediction and given me a voice through this prediction is to exclaim what I have just said. Now, nowhere in the Bible does it say that one cannot repent after having taken the mark of the Antichrist. And I personally don't believe that it is impossible to repent like other Christians say is the case. Now, but clearly it is the mark of the Antichrist, and the prediction will prove it. These connections prove it, in my mind. But to someone who's new to all of this, or the skeptic, fair enough. But when the prediction comes to pass, it will prove what I have just said. That's the purpose of the prediction. The commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy are answered at the end of the must-watch snake bite video on this channel. Make sure you watch that video. Now, because when the prediction comes to pass, it means that your commonly held objections to why this thing cannot be the mark of the Antichrist are incorrect. Period. Case closed. End of debate. No more debate at all. It is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. Okay? So, what's astounding, though, and what further proves this, is this connection right here. The day that the helicopter flew for 66.6 seconds on the date that symbolizes 66 was exactly 6 + 6 + 6 months after the three-letter organization that you can see that I'm pointing to, begins with an F and ends with an A, approved the thing. That's case closed in my mind. Okay, for me, the prediction doesn't need to happen because I already know that all of what I just said is true. Okay? That's amazing beyond words. This was the symbolic day for the thing, and it connects with 6 + 6 + 6 months to this date. What are we talking about here? Oh, and I got off track there. That's right. I wanted to tell you about how what also proves that Kansas is related to the thing is that the thing industry was started, pioneered by the Rockefeller Institute, and the 50 to 100 million deaths from the FLU during the year that ends with 18, named after people from Spain, were a result of the experiments done in Kansas of the primitive things. The thing that killed people in that year, and by the way, the 50 to 100 is an way overinflated number, but in any case, what killed the people was not a thing that begins with a V and ends with a us. It was a bacterial pneumonia. Okay, that's a fact. You can do the research. It's not hard to do. You can find out the truth about that. And anyway, that was caused by the experiments at the military base in Kansas during World War I. Then the soldiers brought it to the trenches, and that was the perfect place for the bacterial pneumonia. And that's the truth. So the truth is that the thing industry is responsible for what happened in 1918. Okay? Just to give you a little background about the thing industry. Now, so that's even more proof, because we're talking about Kansas here when we're talking about the slaughter of the cattle. But what this connection means, this 6 + 6 + 6 months from the symbolic beginning of the thing to the death of the cattle, is that the people that have taken the thing have been branded like cattle because it is the mark of the Antichrist. They have been branded like cattle, off to the slaughter, because they wouldn't listen to people that were telling them otherwise, and or they took it out of convenience because they wanted to travel or keep their job, etc., which was the whole purpose of the mark of the Antichrist, to test the faith of quote-unquote Christians, because it was possible for anyone to know, it was very obvious and clear, that it was a spiritual abomination. And those that took it wasn't only affecting them, it affected other people, because it enabled the beast system to compel other people. Because the tyranny was the result of only no more than 30% of the population being hypnotized. 70% of the population knew what was going on, but didn't do anything. Well, 40% knew, but went along with it out of convenience. 30% were trying to fight back. The 40% that took it out of convenience, woe to you. Repent. And those that took it because they were hypnotized, well, they were hypnotized because of their bigotry and hatred is the bottom line. But it was a spiritual abomination. It was very, very easy to learn that. And that's because the thing industry has all along been a spiritual abomination. But also it uses tissue from infants that are not born. Let's put it that way. Okay, and it changes one's chromosomes and it inserts snake venom. So snake chromosomes are in people's chromosomes, and snake is the symbol of evil in the Bible. So that's why it's a spiritual abomination. So we need to move on here, though. We have also the SN9 SpaceX rocket that fell off of its platform on this day. And that is confirmation, because here we have an X, which is again symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. SpaceX is also here symbolism for transhumanism, which is what the things are. And 9 is the most important number in God's big picture of signs, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment. And that's why the symbolic thing day was exactly 9 months after the CVD disease day, which was when this 3-letter organization officially declared the CVD disease to be begins with a PAN, ends with an emic. And this was the day that Trump gave his Oval Office speech regarding this that ended precisely at 9:11 p.m. There's many other things that make this CVD disease day that's explained in other videos, but this day was known ahead of time. And I said from October or November 2019 that something very big and bad and world-changing was going to happen on March 11th, 2022. And I wasn't saying that about any other date. And I didn't know until March 11th what it would be. I didn't even know on March 10th what it would still be. I could have obviously put two to two together and figured out that it was the CVD, but anyway, I didn't. And anyway, that was the CVD day. And of course, it was the big bad thing that changed the world. But one reason that this date was known ahead of time was that it was exactly 222 months after 9/11, which is why Trump's speech finished exactly at 9:11 p.m. on the live TV clock on the news screen. And the reason for 222 months, why that's relevant, is because through the 9/11 events, God was pointing to George Washington, who was born on the date 2/2, because after his inauguration as the first president, he walked down Wall Street after his inauguration in Federal Hall, which was cracked when the buildings on 9/11 collapsed and engendered an earthquake. And Washington then walked down Wall Street into Trinity Chapel, which today is known as the Miracle Chapel, because it's the only building at ground zero that survived without a broken window or a scratch. And that's because inside that because Washington consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings, which it temporarily did on 9/11, which is why God pointed to George Washington through the 9/11 events. And that's how he did point to Washington. Now, again, God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And again, the number 9 is the most important number. And that's why the CVD disease today is exactly 9 plus 9 plus 9 months to the Mars helicopter that flew for 66.6 seconds, and the 2,000 cattle died, which was the slaughter, okay? So there, again, another confirmation, another third, fourth witness, whatever, to the CVD disease day, okay? And also, these are the 11ths of the month. So we have an 11 and a 9 there because of the 3 9s that connect these two 11ths of the month dates. All right, now, this Mars helicopter on the day of the cattle that died in Kansas is exactly, I mentioned how it was exactly 111 weeks, which pairs with the 9 plus 9 plus 9 months, but it is also exactly 777 days, and that's a 3 sets of 7, which in the Bible is used in context of a judgment from God. For example, the Israelites marched around the walls of security of Jericho once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. Okay, and also this period of time is the equivalent of 213% of a year, and 213 is the 69th semi-prime number, and the most central prophecy in the Bible, in it, the number 69, the ending of the 69th period, is symbolic of the period of the end times and the Antichrist. And this 2 years, 1 month, and 16 days, since that's the number 216, and 216 is 6 times 6 times 6. And we have this 666 symbolic connection from the state that symbolizes 666 when the helicopter flew for 66.6 seconds. And also the Antichrist was born on the 216th day of the year, August 4th, Barack Obama. And he will replace Kamala Harris in a plane crash, which is why she will die in a plane crash. That's the purpose, so that he can become the president again. All right, now we've returned back to where we started here with this 191 days, which again hints at Revelation 9:11. And that's because what's happening here in Revelation chapter 9 is and it speaks of, if you read it correctly, the symbology in this chapter is talking about the mark of the Antichrist with the stingers of the scorpions, for example. Okay, that's symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Now, what is going on here is that those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist are going to be demonically possessed. That's what's happening. I'm going to explain a little bit more here now. So this helicopter, the final day of this helicopter, the big day that we were looking for, the end of it, when it suffered its damage, and the flight number hinted at the Pope, who is the first of the two Antichrists, which is why this 690 days connection, because again, the 70th period after the 69 periods in this most central prophecy is the period of the Antichrist, which is Pope Francis. In fact, the verse before in Daniel 9:26 speaks of the Antichrist because it says, those who will come and destroy the city and the sanctuary, which was the Romans, from that people will come the Antichrist. The descendants of emperors are popes. The first pope was an emperor. And that's just one of many passages in the Bible that are extremely clear that all along the Pope has been the Antichrist. All popes in all of history have been Antichrists, lowercase Antichrists. The prophecy of papacy is blasphemy, and it's extremely annoying and frustrating that there are so many people that claim to be interested in Bible prophecy that do not know that the Pope is the Antichrist, because it's very clear in so many passages. Okay, and I can only say that it's deception from Satan because of their false heretical doctrine that has them interpret 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 wrongly, which they think claims that the identity of the Antichrist is not knowable. It's not true. It's in the Bible. It's very clear. It's as clear as day. But because of their heretical soteriology, which has them interpret the thing that's holding back the Antichrist as the Holy Spirit, anyway, I'm not going to get onto that. So, from the helicopter, it is exactly 690 days. This is extremely prophetic from this extremely prophetic day of this helicopter flight. I forgot to write it in here, but it was the 31st flight. That's because the Antichrist is described in Isaiah chapter 31. Now, this date here, 9/6, hints that 6 divided by 9 equals 0.666. All right? This date here, I also forgot to mention in here, was the day that the search and rescue effort using the U.S. Coast Guard helicopters was called off after a plane plunged into the Puget Sound let me see if I can recall here, Mutiny Bay. Yes, Mutiny Bay. Okay, but it was later discovered that the plane, which was carrying tourists to Rock Island, in the Bible is symbolic of Jesus, the plane crashed because of the tail snapping. So again, the dragon is about its tail in Revelation chapter 12, which is why God uses helicopters to symbolize the red dragon in Revelation chapter 12. Because the Revelation chapter 12 description of the dragon is emphasizing its tail, Okay, and so that's why the plane crashed due to its tail. But what happens in Revelation chapter 12? There's a mutiny in heaven, and then Satan and his angels, the red dragon, are thrown from heaven to earth, which is why this plane with its tail malfunction plunged into Mutiny Bay. In the 42nd state, and in the Bible, the number 42 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Okay, and also, there's more to that sign, but that was the day that the U.S. Coast Guard helicopters search was called off, okay? And that coincided with this flight of Mars' helicopter onto the red planet. Now, let's see, what next? Let's get into it. So this flight was the first flight in which the helicopter flew for 55 seconds. God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. There are only 3 flights out of the 72 in which the helicopter flew for 55 seconds. This is the first one of the 3, and they were all in succession. This one up here, this one here, which is very important, even though the writing is small, I'll get to it in a second. This was the 3rd of the 3. And actually, this here is the point of this video. This is the big one. I mean, this was pretty astounding here. I'm glad you heard that story. But here, this is very, very important. We're getting to it. And the second half of this video will be about this. What happened here, okay? This is primary. This is extremely important, okay? And God is doing all of this to confirm this. The 3rd flight in which it flew for 55 seconds, okay? Now, the first time that it flew for 55 seconds was on Sol 550. So they number the days on Mars, and if I recall, they're a little bit shorter than they are on Earth, and so the days are different. So the term for it instead of day is Sol on Mars, the Sol days, and okay, hints of the sun. In other words, the rotation of the Mars with the sun. So anyway, it was the 550th Sol of the mission. Okay? Now, this was exactly 55 months after SpaceX, as in mark of the Antichrist, launched its red Tesla into space with a dummy behind the wheel. It was a promotional stunt for Tesla. They launched a red Tesla Roadster. And at the same time, Elon Musk was talking about Mars. He doesn't talk about it as much, but this was the tweet that he sent it out on this day. You know, they're going to Mars. It's a red Tesla. And Elon Musk mentioned the Tesla encountering aliens. Okay? Because that's the big deception that's coming in the 5th trumpet, which will begin on August 16th. The Pope will announce that aliens have arrived and they have made him the ambassador for the world, giving him authority over the governments of the world instantly, becoming the Antichrist. Okay? And those who believe it, believe that, or will believe it, believe falsely, mistakenly, that the Pope is some sort of important figure. He isn't. The office of papacy is blasphemy. He's worse than neutral. He isn't just neutral. He's certainly not an important figure in Christianity. Catholicism isn't a legitimate denomination of Christianity. It is pagan religion wrapped in a wrapper to make it look like Christianity is the wolf in sheep's clothing. And anyway, but those that think that he's a leader of the world spiritually will fall for this deception when he says that the aliens have made him the ambassador for the world because he's the leader spiritually for the world. Okay? There's more to that. The reason why he's the first Jesuit pope is because the aliens will be promoting New Age type of theology, and the Jesuits are known for their mysticism. All right. Now, so exactly 55 months, okay? And so why is that? Why all these 55s here? We've got exactly 55 months from and the Tesla, the dummy behind the wheel of the Tesla, that's symbolic of the Antichrist. And he's riding the red horse. Symbolically, in Revelation chapter 6, there's a horseman that rides the red horse, and that is the Antichrist that's riding the red horse. And we have this dummy behind the wheel of the red Tesla, which is exactly what it hints at. And he's listening to, according to SpaceX and Elon Musk, David Bowie music, and David Bowie in God's signs is symbolic of aliens and the Antichrist. Okay? I won't make this video about David Bowie. I might mention that a little later in the video anyway. Now, so why the 55 months then to the Sol 550 when the helicopter first flew for 55 seconds? And we have, as you can see here, a 555 weeks connection. Okay, I had to press pause and stop the video to sneeze, and it was exactly 36.00 minutes. And that's because the number 36 ends at 666. It is 3 6s and also 6 times 6 and 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th triangular number is 666, and also 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Anyway, that's not really a sign, it's a personal thing. But I just thought I would mention it because we are getting to some, I was just about to tell you the big enchilada here. So that's why it's personally significant. Take that for what you will. It's not a sign meant for the entire world, unless maybe it is because I've just mentioned it. But anyway, it's not the same type of signs that we talk about on this channel. Other people talk about God told me this, God revealed this to me, and I think it's all nonsense. This channel is different. This is what God is communicating to the world. It's objective. It's furthermore, as I mentioned, backed with second and third and multiple witnesses. Okay, I'm not relying on God told me this and revealed this to me, etc. I don't ever talk that sort of language. I just thought I would mention this as just for interest's sake. But anyway, so the thing is that what I was about to say before I had to sneeze, and what do they say when people sneeze? Bless you. What I was about to say is the reason for the 55s is the fifth trumpet, but also, and the fifth trumpet is about when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. And what is happening for those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist is demonic possession facilitated through 5G frequencies. That's the reason for these fives. It's the 5G frequencies that will activate the self-assembling components that are in the thing, that are in people, that will trigger the facilitation of delta brainwaves, as I'm about to get to, that will induce demonic possession. I know that may sound hard to believe for some people, of course, a lot of people, of course, but the thing is that the prediction will prove this, that all of what I'm saying in this diagram is true. Now, we're going to get into some more confirmations here because this Sol 550 and 55 seconds flight was exactly 555 weeks after this prophetic date, which is when the basketball president, Barack Obama, upon David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Great Britain's arrival, whisked him off, I believe on Obama's helicopter, or maybe plane, to a college basketball game. Okay? I mean, who does that? Who does that? The Prime Minister of a very important nation comes to visit to talk about matters of state, and you go and laugh it up at a college basketball game. Well, why did he do that? Because Barack Obama wanted to watch a college it was the March Madness, the final, the college basketball tournament. Anyway, whatever. But the point is here, though, is that the prophetic significance of this game is explained later in this video. But it was an upset by the team named Delta Devils. I'll explain more later, okay? But this Delta Devils is confirmation because the helicopter has, for a long time before it stopped working, been returning to the river delta, which is where it first landed. Then it went off on its way, and then it was returning to the river delta, the ancient river delta on Mars. And that's a confirmation that this Delta Devils connection here is about the helicopter. which is again symbolic of the Antichrist and the mark of the Antichrist, which will facilitate delta brainwaves, which will induce demonic possession, which is described in the fifth trumpet, and it's 5G frequencies that will do this, which is the reason for the 55s. Ephesians 2:2 in the Bible describes Satan as the prince of the power of the air. That's why the helicopter which flew in the air on Mars, that's why Kamala Harris's plane crash, when she will fall from the sky in a plane crash, prince of the power of the air. And that's why 5G frequencies will induce demonic possession and the slaughter and the coming genocide through the prince of the power of the air and 5G frequencies. We have more confirmation of this, my friends. This connection here of 690 days, which is extremely profound, is also broken into this connection, which is 55 days to this date. What happened on this date? This was the day of a prophetic sign in a football game. It was a Monday night football game, if I recall. And the prophetic play of the game was the last play before the second half ended, when the kicker kicked a 55-yard field goal. If I recall, it was the second longest kick of the year. I think maybe for the kicker, but maybe in general. No, I don't think it would be in general. But anyway, and the other one I think was 58. I'm getting off into too much detail. But the 58 symbolizes the 5th through 8th kings in the book of Revelation, which is also about Pope Francis. Well, anyway, the kick, the field goal right before halftime made the score 11-0, which hints at 110. And that's relevant too. The two planes struck the two towers that were 110 stories, and 110 divided by 2 is 55. And that's another prince of the power of the air. When the planes struck way up high in the air, the Twin Towers on 9/11. Furthermore, the Twin Towers are symbolic of chromosomes which are changed by the mark of the Antichrist. The Twin Towers were replaced with the One World Tower, and if you go and look at it again, you will clearly see that it absolutely resembles a thing. Look at it. It's a thing. You know what I'm talking about. It's a thing that puts the thing in people. That's the One World Tower that replaced the Twin Towers. Now, the Twin Towers, why do they resemble chromosomes, or are they symbolism for chromosomes? Because they symbolize the two arms of a chromosome. And what proves that, beyond a doubt, is that exactly 70 weeks after they officially first opened, on the date 4/4, by the way, which hints at Barack Obama, the 44th president, exactly 70 weeks later, which is, by the way, the most central prophecy in the Bible, it's the 70 weeks prophecy, which involves this period of 69 that I mentioned. Exactly 70 weeks after they officially opened, Philip Petit evaded security and walked a tightrope across the Twin Towers. His tightrope and his balancing pole with him at the center symbolized a cross with a man at the center. When the towers collapsed, a perfectly proportioned 20-foot steel beam cross was standing upright in the flattened debris field, which is now in the Museum of 9/11, was one of the things that caused me to come to faith, incidentally. So we had the beginning of the towers, at the end of the towers, a cross. But Philip Petit, because in the chromosomes, the scientific term for the smaller arm of the two arms is the petite arm. That's why Philip Petit walked across exactly 70 weeks after the towers opened, is because they symbolize the chromosomes, which are changed by taking the mark of the Antichrist, which makes them a spiritual abomination. Okay, now, this was also the day of the prophetic sign involving a helicopter. It was about a helicopter crash. It was the NTSB report. It was reported that the helicopter flew successfully twice during that day. It was a tourism helicopter in Hawaii, where Obama is from. And it flew fine twice, and then on the third flight, it crashed, which hints at 2 and 3, which hints at 23. Barack Obama, the basketball president, wore jersey number 23. 2 divided by 3 is 0.666. And Jesus said to Peter that the rooster would not crow twice before Peter would deny him 3 times, which is why taking the mark of the Antichrist is tantamount to denying Jesus. Okay. Now, 444, because that's a number of days that God uses to hint at the Antichrist, the 44th president, but also the 444th word in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word for man, which is a hint at the Antichrist. Now, this helicopter sign here with its report, I'm not getting into all the details, of course, I'm trying to make this brief. This is the same date here. This was exactly 23 years after this 31st of the month. And again, Isaiah chapter 31 describes the Antichrist. Now, the beginning of Isaiah chapter 1 begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt," which is what exactly Barack Obama did upon becoming the president. The first thing he did was he went down to Cairo, Egypt, to deliver his famous speech in which he said to the Muslim world that America is no longer a Christian nation because he is the Antichrist. And so that's Isaiah chapter 31, which is why these two 31sts of the month connect with this exact 23 years. Now, to confirm his signs, patterns, and connections, God pairs certain numbers together, such as 9, 23, and 44. The reason is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 became the president, the 44th one, in 2009. Okay, and that's why the 444 years pairs with this 444 days pairs with the 23 years here. It's astounding, okay? But it gets us to this date here, which was the day that Flight 990 Egypt Air, as it was going down, it went down as it was going to Egypt. And it was in 1999. That's 3 nines. That pairs with the 23 here. 990 also pairs with the 23 years. Also, 990 is the 44th triangular number. In a triangle of numbers, the 44th row, the last number is 990. Now, Barack Obama, by the way, he went down to Egypt on June 9th, 2009. 6 divided by 9 equals 0.666. And that was exactly 3,000 days before the eclipse in 2017. And the eclipse in 2024 crossed over the path of the one in 2017 and engendered an X over the nation. X's are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The X engendered over the nation is over the area of the country that is nicknamed Little Egypt, which is why Kamala Harris's plane crash will be in St. Louis near this area nicknamed Little Egypt, where the eclipses engendered an X. X's are all about straight lines intersecting each other and their midpoints. And the midpoint date, the middle date of the two eclipses that engendered an X, was 3 days after this. December 14th, 2020, which was when the first American took the thing outside of a trial. And on that day, there was a prophetic 4.4 magnitude earthquake that was 4 times 4 miles deep on Hawaii's biggest mountain, which is the island in which the helicopter crashed. And it was on the northwest flank. And in Daniel chapter 8, the Antichrist comes from the north and the west. And by the way, exactly due northwest from Jerusalem is Rome. Another clear indication from Bible prophecy, without a doubt, that the Pope is the Antichrist. Well, anyway, so then we have this 4 plus 4 days, which ends at 44, which pairs the 23, back to this date in October 23rd, 1999, which was when Harrison Ford crashed his helicopter, which was the first of many aviation mishaps for Harrison Ford, which God has been using to hint at the coming aviation mishap of Kamala Harris. Okay, and this is a helicopter, no less. Again, helicopters are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. This connects with 4 plus 4 days to going down to Egypt. Oh, and by the way, the reason for the 3,000 days between Obama going down to Egypt and the eclipse that went over Little Egypt, including Cairo, Illinois, is that, and Barack Obama, his speech was in Cairo, Egypt. The 3,000 days is because after the rebellion at Mount Sinai, 3,000 Jews perished. 3,000 Israelites perished in the desert after their rebellion at Mount Sinai. Okay. That's why, by the way, on 9/11, it was 2,996 people that died. It was quote-unquote about 3,000. In the Bible, it's quote-unquote about 3,000. It was pointing to the rebellion at Mount Sinai and judgment from God for that. In other words, America's rebellion and the coming slaughter, because it was a slaughter. 3,000 deaths of the Israelites was a slaughter in the desert. They were literally slaughtered, actually, by the sword. Okay, now, so so we got this out of the way here. So 444 days gets us back to this final date for the Ingenuity helicopter, which again connects to the day it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Okay, now, oh, and by the way, another reason for 55 is that Little Egypt is connected to Chicago, the home of the Antichrist, with I-55, the 55 interstate highway, which also goes to Memphis, Tennessee, in the 4x4th state, and on and on. Okay. Where Graceland is. The king, as an Antichrist king, has his palace. And anyway, okay. So, okay, now to backtrack here. And so there you go. And so we have Harrison Ford's helicopter crash connect with 4 + 4 days, then exactly 23 years, then exactly 444 days, to the last day of Mars's helicopter, which I knew all along would happen. I knew all along, like for a long time, that Harrison Ford's helicopter crash would connect to the day of the crash of the helicopter on Mars, except it didn't exactly crash like I thought it would. Instead, it suffered the serious damage that ended its mission on Mars. It's a very straightforward connection. It's amazing. Okay? Now, let's backtrack back to the first of the, and by the way, this was the, no, here, we're getting to it right here. This was the first of the 3 flights in which it flew for 55 seconds. God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. The first of the 3 flights began on the 31st flight. Okay, that connects to Isaiah chapter 31. These 2 31st days of the month, these helicopter signs and all that, okay? Well, this Mars helicopter date is 6 + 6 + 6 days before September 24th, 2022. And this was the third of the 3 flights in which the helicopter flew for 55 seconds. Now, this is the big deal, but I'm going to explain it later. There was mysterious debris on the helicopter's leg, and you can see it. I'm going to show you the image from NASA. You decide for yourself what that is, okay? And I'll be talking about the meaning of it. But because of this, NASA was confused as to what it was, and it didn't fly the helicopter again for, I think, about 2 months, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, which had been otherwise flying, once every 10 or 15 days or whatever. Okay, so, okay, because, for example, from 9/6 to 9/24, there was 3 flights, okay? So, and then there was a hiatus of flights because, and NASA didn't ever follow up. It described what happened and described how it was mysterious, and they were looking into it. They put that update onto the Wikipedia right after it happened, but then there was no update ever since as to what they determined the issue was. And that's for good reason, because they don't know what it is, or they don't want to say. Anyway, watch the rest of this video, okay? Like I'm saying, it is the big deal. I'm just going to finish this rest of this diagram here before we get to it, though, okay? I'll just be quick. This date here was known ahead of time because it was exactly 50 years, as in 5, as in 5G, fifth trumpet. Also, 50 years is extremely prophetic in the Bible, in the book of Leviticus. So this date here was exactly 50 years after this prophetic plane crash. This was at an air show, a jet flew, when it couldn't take off, into an ice cream shop in the 42nd state, which is at the Antichrist, and it killed 23 people because the Antichrist his number is 23 in high school basketball. Now, the Antichrist will come to power again through a prophetic plane crash, Kamala Harris's plane crash. Now, this is amazing because this is the reason why Joe Biden is known for loving ice cream. And he is known for wearing his trademark aviator sunglasses when he goes into ice cream shops. Can you believe it? It's because of this crash, this plane crash, into the ice cream shop, the Farrell's ice cream shop. There was another Farrell's ice cream shop crash in 2014, and I forget the details. It's in another video. Watch all the videos when the prediction comes to pass. And it connects profoundly to the day that Biden selected Kamala Harris. I forget all the connections though, okay? But that was when an old, disoriented man drove his SUV into the Farrell's ice cream shop and killed a person. And with the other injured, a total of 7, which is God's signature number. And there's more reasons for the 7 though, because of what it connects to. The 7 runs that, well, never mind. So the point is that it has been known even before Kamala Harris was selected. The reason why Biden was the nominee is because he was losing his mind. I mean, people have known this for years, right? That's why he has his gaffes. Well, he's always, no, I take that back. He's been making gaffes forever, right? But, and anyway, the point is that I knew even before the shoplifted referendum that the reason prophetically that Joe Biden would become the president again is that it would lead the way to how Barack Obama would become the president again, through Joe Biden stepping down because he would become a disoriented old man. That was clear. I mean, okay, so that's why the disoriented old man that drove his SUV into the Farrell's ice cream shop, because of this plane crash here, and that's why Joe Biden is portrayed by his handlers and the media as a sweet old man who goes into ice cream shops wearing aviator sunglasses. It's because it's hinting at the coming plane crash, and that's hinted at with the plane crash into the ice cream shop, which killed 23 people. Okay? This is a very historic event, right? That's why the exact 50 years to this aviation prophetic sign here, the helicopter, all right? And the mishap, if you will. It is a mishap because of the debris that's on the leg of the helicopter, and that's why it didn't fly for a while. And again, it connects with 6 plus 6 days, which is at 666, the number of the Antichrist, to the 5G helicopter day, if you will, okay? Because looking down through the camera from the bottom of the helicopter onto Mars, the red planet, is symbolic of looking down through a microscope into what is inside the liquid that is red, that is in people that have taken the thing. Now, the Sol 550, when it flew for 55 seconds, is also exactly 505 days after the first flight of anything on another planet. The first helicopter flight was this date. This was a very prophetic date. And like I mentioned earlier, I knew way back then that eventually this would lead to a very prophetic sign, which would be the crash of this helicopter, which would lead the way to Harris's crash, which is in fact what I'm claiming in this diagram. The 505 also obviously hints at 55. You cancel out the 0 in God's signs. That's how he works it, okay? And what confirms this too is that this was the day that Kamala Harris was in High Point, North Carolina, to promote her and Biden's $2.3 trillion jobs and infrastructure package. She was in High Point, North Carolina, and she was at a school bus, an electric school bus manufacturer plant. That's symbolic of electricity, and she's in High Point, which is symbolic of the high place. That's because the name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from high place. Okay? In Luke 10:18, Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. The name Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Barak in Hebrew means lightning. Bama means high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven. For example, Lucifer fell from the high place, a metaphor for heaven. And in the language Jesus would have spoken, Aramaic, the word for from is O. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he knew there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, or he revealed the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. So much for 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and not being able to know the identity of the Antichrist. The two of them, actually. There's two Antichrists, and both of them have been known since the recording of the Bible. Now, so that's why, so High Point. Now, this first flight and Harris in High Point promoting electricity, okay, is exactly 9 years after Joe Biden made an emergency landing as the vice president in his Air Force Two plane when it was struck by a bird in California, the state that Harris would represent as the senator. She is now the vice president. Joe Biden was the vice president. She will suffer a bird strike to her plane. Joe Biden's plane suffered a bird strike. So this is amazing. And the 9 years pairs with the 2.3 trillion, which confirms the signs and connections, as I mentioned earlier. Now, this date here in which Kamala Harris was in High Point promoting 2.3 trillion was exactly 69 weeks after one man died in Muir Woods National Park, which gives us national judgment symbolism, who died due to a fallen old growth tree. Old growth trees are symbolic of the nation because these trees have been around as long as the nation. And in the Bible, fallen trees are symbolic of judgment on a people or nation. Okay, and the man that died was an Indian American. Kamala Harris is of Indian descent. From the time that the tree fell and he was pronounced dead, it was 23 minutes, which connects to the 2.3 trillion. Okay, now this was also the day that it was reported in national media that California had experienced 9 earthquakes in 24 hours. Now, of course, there's little tremors going on all the time, but you can look it up yourself. The media headlines for this, 9 earthquakes in 24 hours. That gets my attention because I know that the number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. Okay, so and this 24-hour period coincided with Christmas Eve and going into Christmas morning. The hiker in Muir Woods was killed on Christmas morning. This one death of the Indian American in the 9 earthquakes in California when Kamala Harris was the senator from California, the Indian descended senator, 69 weeks, because 69 weeks is the period of time that symbolizes the Antichrist in the most central prophecy. As I mentioned, it's a 70 weeks prophecy, but after the 69 weeks is the period of the Antichrist. That's why it's exactly 69 weeks to the day that Kamala Harris and this flight sign here, okay, which leads to her dying in a plane crash. It's hinting at her death in a plane crash, which is why the death in the national park due to the fallen tree in California, etc. Okay, so and I knew all along that this would eventually lead to the day that it is predicted that Kamala Harris would die. And I'm certain that this isn't the only trail that leads to it, but here we have it. 69 weeks, 505 days, 690 days, okay, parallel there even, and then 191 days. Now, I can't recall, but I'm pretty sure there's a 9/11 in the fallen tree details. I think the tree fell at 9/11, or he was pronounced dead at 9/11 a.m. I can't recall for sure. Let me just check. Okay, of course, it was a 911 call. So from the call made to 9/11, from the 911 call, it was 23 minutes before he was pronounced dead. So we do have a 9/11 in this beginning of this trail, which was then 69 weeks, or is 69 weeks, 505 days, 690 days, and then 191, which hints at 9/11 days to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. And her flight will be on its way to California. A very important thing that I failed to mention is that the reason why X's are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist is because they are symbolic of chromosomes. Okay, and it is chromosomes that are changed through taking the mark of the Antichrist. Now you can see the images of the damaged rotor blades of the helicopter, which resulted in it being grounded and the end of the mission. It's the tip of the blades that are damaged, and this is symbolic of damage to chromosomes as a result of taking the mark of the Antichrist. Because again, in God's signs, rotor blades of helicopters are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist because they're symbolic of X's, and X's are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist because they resemble chromosomes. All right, now we're going to play the part that I made back in 2022. I recommend listening to the rest of this video, and make sure that you don't ever stop sharing this video in social media everywhere. Put the link to it. Talk about the prediction. Put the link into it. Even on channels you don't go to. Like, spend hours, in other words. This is a bag of gold. Jesus warned Christians that did nothing with their bag of gold would be banished to hell. This is a massive bag of gold. If you do nothing with this, woe to you. And I mean that literally. I mean, just read Ezekiel chapter 33 and 3, for example, for the watchmen, people that didn't warn people, okay? This is a warning. You need to share this video nonstop. Whatever you do, do not skip this video. All right, welcome. The amazing video footage that you are looking at was taken during a flight from the bottom of NASA's helicopter on Mars. In a minute, I will explain why this video footage is amazing beyond words. The information that will be explained in this video will be absolutely shocking and also disturbing and also extremely important. So despite it being disturbing and shocking, this information must be learned by everyone, and furthermore, it must be shared with everyone. Whatever you do, do not skip this video. The reason for this prediction, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction, and the reason for this video is to prove everything that I am going to say in this video is true. That is the purpose for this prediction. Therefore, there is no debate regarding the information that I will be presenting. If there were to continue to be a debate on the information I will be presenting, there is no purpose for the prediction. In other words, the information is controversial, but that is the reason for the prediction, to end the controversy. What I am going to prove through this prediction and the other things that I will be using to explain what I'm about to explain is that this image here that you are watching is footage from the last flight of NASA's helicopter Ingenuity on Mars. And what I will prove is that God has used this as symbolism for looking through a microscope at the blood. Some social media sites have a maximum length for videos that can be posted, and so I need to cut this video into 2 parts. Click on the link to watch the remainder of this video. You can also find this link in the description box below this video. Make sure you watch the remainder of this extremely important video that is posted on a different channel than the one you are watching now. The link to the rest of this video is in the description box below this video. If the link is not in the description box below this video, visit Odysee.com, which is spelled Odyssee.com. On Odysee.com, in the search bar, type the name of my channel, Harris Crash Prediction. Then go into the channel by clicking the channel name, Harris Crash Prediction. Once you are on the channel's homepage, then click Content. Then use the channel's search box. This is different than the Odysee.com search box. Search for this video by typing the same video title as the title of the video you are currently watching. Alternatively, for more information on how to find this video, visit the website harriscrashprediction.com. Hopefully you at least found this introduction video to be interesting, and if so, please leave a like and a comment and upvote the video, and please help this video to go viral by sharing it with everyone you know and sharing it everywhere in social media.